What was DeMar DeRozan referring to? He's referring to his daughter who just perfected the free throw distraction technique. And you can say it's a coincidence, Sam, but the Toronto Raptors missed half of their free throws last night. They missed half of their free throws, including two big ones at the end where they had an opportunity to try. Pascal Siakam had 3 free throw attempts, and he missed 2 of them. And DeMar DeRozan's 9-year-old daughter had the shriek thing going. Having daughters is powerful, Sam. I don't know if you have daughters, but I recommend it highly.
I'm not a girl dad. I've heard it's an amazing experience. I have boys myself. But if I was DeMar, I'd be proud. In all my years as a fan, as a reporter, I've never seen anything like this. It was actually impactful. And I think it's fair to say, wow, like these professional basketball players from Toronto who are pretty damn good at their jobs, they got a little shook. And it was so much fun to see her try to time it perfectly. And, do we need that every single time out from every kid in the building? That might get a little tough, but I love it. I thought it was a pretty neat little moment.
It was definitely dope. He said that she won't be at the next game, which is unfortunate because clearly she did her job. I hope that she gets paid something really good. I don't know what do these kids get? VC? What do they get now? They Roblox. She better get whatever she wants,
right?
Because she earned every cent. What she was doing. I'm doing schoolwork last night, guys, and I'm like, what is that noise? I literally thought it was something outside. Didn't know until after I went to Twitter that it was his daughter making that noise the whole time. So she did her job because she distracted me as well.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what allowance looks like when your dad's on a max contract, but something tells me she's going to do okay.
Yeah, even if you allowance, say, hey, I'll just take 2% of what your per game check is. That's a pretty good allowance for her. But I'm a little concerned here, though, Sam, because I look at Toronto and I kind of let it go when it happened because there were more interesting storylines. When Nick Nurse came out and said what he said, maybe with like a week or 2 weeks left in the season, and the Raptors in contention, I felt him as somebody who has worked for a while. Okay, I get it from a work perspective, but I'm like, why are you talking like this? Your team is not done. You're not done. You could increase your playoff odds. You could move up to a 7, 8, 9, I don't know, 9 seed. Why are you talking about next year? You're going to take a step back and you're not sure. I'm wondering if this, not just Nurse, I wonder if the Raptors really were about it, just emotionally invested in this play-in tournament. What do you think?
It's hard to tell. I mean, they were up big, you know what I mean? And they were looking like they were going to run away with this thing. But in general, Michael, I for sure agree with those questions that you raised are very, very fair. You know, if you go back for me earlier in the regular season, there was a lot of chatter about Nick Nurse's future in league circles. And I looked into it at one point, but I think the assumption that I made incorrectly was that maybe management with Masai Ujiri would be ready to try a new voice. And I was told back then, that's not correct. Like, let it play out, but that there was nobody pushing Nick out. What I did not see coming was this sentiment from Nick that maybe he's thinking about walking away. And we'll see what happens, but he's obviously been tied to the job in Houston with Steven Silas being let go. He's got ties to the Rockets organization. Timing-wise, a very strange time to reflect when you're still in the trenches, so to speak. But they played really, really well until Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan woke up and obviously took that game.
Sam, I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about the situation with CJ McCollum because obviously he made some comments last night that people haven't tried to interpret as their own based on what we know about Zion, who apparently looked like he was ready to play, but ultimately didn't play in that game. And so there's some speculation going on, people saying it wasn't a big deal, that the players are actually good. There's no issue. And then he comes out with these vague comments post-game. Now, obviously, it doesn't help that he didn't have the best of nights to have those types of comments. But ultimately, ultimately he said what he said, and obviously Zion could have been a factor had he played. What was your thoughts on what he said?
I think, again, in terms of fair analysis, it doesn't take It's not rocket science here. It felt like he was talking about Zion. He made a point at the end to say 1 through 15, pay attention to diet, pay attention to sleep. But you're using all these buzzwords that, especially diet, that are tied to Zion.
Yeah.
I also think it carries more weight for a couple of reasons. He's the vet in that locker room. He's the president of the Players Association. And a little more context that came to mind for me is that recently, as the league and the players came to an agreement on a CBA, the games played was a major, major topic. And CJ has been outspoken about the idea that load management is driven by the teams and the organization, and that players really want to play. It feels like he's just deciding to lean into this issue, and that whether it's Zion or everybody else in the NBA, he wants guys to push through and be on the court. Now, only he knows exactly, where his mind is at, but he's smart enough to know how those comments were going to land for sure.
What do you think about Zion? And Rita brings up a great point about this player. A couple years ago, longer now, right after the NCAA tournament, I remember Ja Morant had a game, 40 points, 10 assists in the tournament. Like round 1 they win, round 2 they lose. And so the question on those debate shows, I don't know, these debate shows and talk shows, I don't know about those. But the question came up, hey, should Ja Morant be the number 1 pick in the draft and Zion too? I was like, no way, you got to take Zion. But if you look at his career, he really is so talented. He's an all-NBA talent, clearly, but he just hasn't played. What do you think the story is with him, and what do you think his future is? Because I think it's probably best for all involved for him to just get a fresh start somewhere else. What do you think?
It's so hard to handicap, you guys, because, now you hear people saying that Joel Embiid is the best case scenario where Embiid survived a bunch of injuries in those first 4 years. Now, could be the MVP. What to me is so hard about kind of covering Zion is that it's both extremes. He's either completely on the shelf for a very long period of time, or he looks like he could be the MVP. You know what I mean? Like he is that special, that impactful.
Yeah.
And if you're the Pelicans, you talk about the ultimate tease. Like, of course they don't want to give him up because this guy is that good. I also, media-wise, man, I've always had a hard time. I did not play the game in the pros, didn't play in college. And I've had a lot of times when we find ourselves, kind of trying to read a player's mind, is Zion simply saying, I chose not to play because of where my head is at when I'm totally fine physically? The way he framed it made it hard because you're telling folks that you're making a choice to not just get out there and give it whatever you can give it, which, not to sound like the old head, but it's like I think if MJ was on this panel, he would probably say, like he did in his first year going to the playoffs, when ownership wanted him to shut it down with an injury and basically go for that lottery pick, he told them, that's not what we're doing. We're playing the Celtics. And then he dropped 60 plus on Larry Bird. And, that type of mentality, Zion's not making that choice. But again, you can probably even tell I get kind of hesitant to crack on these guys too much because I don't know exactly what he's dealing with. But it's hard. They've got that massive contract and this future tied to a player that is so good when he's out there, but he just can't stay on the floor.
Before we let you go, I'm curious to know, I know we can talk playoff scenarios and such, but there's 4 Cali teams. Obviously, all the Cali teams have made it. Which one is the last team standing? Which one is the last team standing? Not to say that they're going to make it all the way, but the last team standing.
Right. No, good question, Rita. I think, I live near Sacramento, so the locals might see this and get upset at their guy who used to cover the Kings. I don't think it's Sacramento. And I think the team that is probably going to take them out in the first round would be the last team standing of that foursome. Lakers Grizzlies is going to be really tough. That's going to be a good series. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. Clippers, no Paul George. I wrote a column last week that one of those where I wasn't sure if I totally believed what I was writing, but that Andrew Wiggins being back, makes me look at the champs and say, I could actually see a world, if you squint hard enough, that they go out and do it again.
Wow. It's so fascinating because the opinions are so split on the Golden State Warriors. I mean, some people, and I'm with you. I look at them, they're dangerous. And other people look at them and say, come on, look at that road record. Look at the other teams. I don't know. So we'll see. Playoffs will begin this weekend. The real playoffs. I mean, sorry.
Real playoffs.
Right.
This is just appetizer. This is just fun appetizer stuff here. But the real playoffs begin this weekend.
It's good
like
appetizers
too.
Like, I'm already feeling kind of full. You know what I mean?
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.